Good evening. This is a test of the audio. Can all of the remote attendees hear clearly? I'm seeing some thumbs up. Excellent. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with a couple of introductions. My name is Sean Burnett. I am the Capital Planning Chief for Baltimore City's Department of Transportation. With me is John Leishman. He's one of my planners and the project manager for this project. We also have Eric James, Shaquetta, and Miss Scott, who are all here representing the Community Engagement Division from Baltimore City's Department of Transportation. And in the back, we have some of our consultants. We have Josh Crunkleton from AECom, as well as Li Ling Tian, who is from Pella Design. We'll go ahead and I'll start walking us through the presentation. The only request I would make is to reserve some of the questions for the end. Let's try and see if we can refrain from sharing content. Okay. Good to go? All right. So the only request I would have is that we refrain from asking questions. We would hold those till the end during the Q&A portion of the presentation. For those of you online, feel free to post your questions in the chat. They will be recorded and then we'll answer them in order. Okay, so for those of you familiar with Old Town Mall is a historical asset over in this neighborhood of Baltimore. Currently, Baltimore City Department of Transportation is working through a project that will reimagine the right-of-way. Construction in this project will be confined to the publicly owned right-of-way in Old Town Mall. So that would be the street portion of it. And our overall design approach at this stage is to create a pedestrian-centered shared street environment. So again, this is just an overhead view of Old Town Mall and its current condition. And the grade area is the right-of-way portion of Old Town Mall. So that's the portion in question that we're discussing. Okay. So Old Town Mall is located in a community that has the capacity to be highly pedestrian friendly, to have a lot of neighborhood level connections, to allow people to walk and access this environment without having to use their car or take the bus or some of these other things. And so to emphasize that, we're also trying to look at the current site issues. As part of that, some of the general degradation right-of-way, some of the neglect over time has led to some of the brick and the other pieces kind of coming up. So again, the city has recognized this, and now in conjunction with HABC, DHCD, and the Department of Planning, Baltimore City DOT has made a commitment to refurbishing the right-of-way in Old Town Mall to provide support for the future development of it. So our general design approach for this project is to provide a streetscape design that will enhance the identity and the sense of place of Old Town Mall, that will restore the historic right-of-way, provide limited vehicle access to businesses along the corridor, as well as provide a safe and community-based space that is conducive to economic development. So what you see here is some of the boards we had at our last public meeting. where we ask people to identify certain aspects of this project that may interest them or that they were excited about. Can we figure out why it keeps going? Anyway, so as you can see here, some of the things that people really generally liked was the use of planters to define the street space, using brick pavers on the sidewalk and street. People really like the idea of a plaza with trees, as well as some open space, some greenery. So the takeaways from this was that the neighbors and the community that was attending were highly energized by greenery and by some of these different kinds of furnishings. So within our envisioning process for a new Old Town Mall right-of-way, where we landed on was a style called Woonerf. Woonerf is a funny word for a term for a street that is curbless, something that is shared both by pedestrians as well as vehicles. It's a mixed mode of transit that treats vehicles as guests, so invites them into the space, but sharply reduces their speeds, typically under 10 or under 5 miles per hour. They're typically placed in areas of high commerce, shopping areas, things of that nature, where people can kind of cross back and forth at will. So here are some examples of what a Woonerf looks like. You can see here that they've got mixed modes, people walking, biking, and also driving through this corridor. Here are another couple of examples. Some of the notable pieces here is that it brings a more intimate kind of relationship between people who are traveling through the corridor and the retail spaces. This picture is from a development in Florida, and you can kind of see how they've mixed some of the street furniture as well as some limited parking to try and, again, create that atmosphere where it's really, really accessible. So the streetscape design principles that we're working off of is a multimodal shared street environment. We're focusing on pedestrians and pedestrian safety. We're going to integrate green infrastructure into the streetscape, and we're also going to utilize pavers and patterns to define the street space function, and then also create a cohesive branding utilizing street furniture, trash cans and benches, and then also try to maintain as sustainable a practice as possible. So we're going to go through the two concepts that we have currently. The first concept introduces a 10-foot wide travel lane, 15 on-street parking spaces, 5 parking and loading bays. Keeps getting away from me. And then a number of bike racks, some other amenities, and then obviously some improved lighting. And so if we can see here, the first concept, the major difference between this and concept 2 is that the first concept restricts all of the parking to a single side of the street. So it would center it on the south side of Old Town Mall. And you can see here kind of a deeper look at what we've put together. So obviously we're, again, featuring lots of greenery, trying to feature some of those sustainable and nice features. We'll see here some of the cross sections. This would be a 10-foot travel lane and very large amenity spaces. Amenity spaces are going to be where the majority of the street furniture and things of that nature are. So this is an early concept rendering just to try and get an idea of how the travel lane and some of the amenity spaces will work together. And then we'll go ahead, and this is the second design concept. So relatively similar to the first design concept, but where it departs is that it staggers the parking and loading zones. in order to try and create even more traffic calming, to try and create, again, an environment where we're allowing for more amenity space interstitially throughout the corridor. So here we just have some of the closer looks, some of the cross sections. And again, another early rendering of what this would kind of look like. So some of the advantages and disadvantages, you can see here that concept 2 has an advantage of having parking serving both sides of Old Town Mall. It also, where are you going? And it also has a little more parking. Concept 2 also has higher degrees of loading availability and some more traffic calming by staggering those parking locations. Concept 1 has maybe a better clarity of traffic pattern. And then also perhaps a greater tree canopy coverage because of the ability to locate trees on a very standardized kind of way. And then you can see here that we've also got concept 2 having the advantage in terms of stormwater volume. By staggering it, we can kind of place the greenery in a location so that is more efficient to kind of filtering some of that stormwater and controlling some of the runoff. We have heard in the past that's a challenge in Old Town as it is currently. And then it also has more space for some of the bike racks. Concept 1, by restricting parking to one side, would allow for more utilization of the north side of Old Town Mall. But again, you know, the majority of the businesses that are, or excuse me, buildings that are present are not occupied. And we do not know at this time what their future uses might look like. So there is an advantage there for concept 2, the way that it kind of tries to spread that space out as much as possible along the north and south side. And then we'll also just say here that the streetscape appeal with alternate parking and pedestrian comfort, both pretty good for both concepts, but lean again kind of towards that second concept of staggered parking. So here we're kind of going into a little more detail about the materiality of the project. Right now, we're looking at using paver materials to effectively delineate street space for those various uses. And you can see here kind of a picture of what that would look like. You can see here, we're going to be using some of that greenery to try and further delineate the spaces. And then also the materiality is going to reinforce kind of the uses, where the parking is allowed. And then again, kind of where the primary travel lane is. And so also as an important part of this, using street furniture to establish a functional and visually cohesive and aesthetically pleasing sustainable streetscape. That's a mouthful, but that's a lot of words to say that what we're trying to do with our street furniture is create a inviting environment that encourages people to come and spend time, to shop, to eat, to kind of do all of these different things that Old Town Mall hopefully will be able to provide. So here we have a couple of examples. These are some of the city's street furniture types. This is more of a modern street furniture type. And then here you can see kind of the more traditional design. So I'll close this out by talking about some of the future steps, the things that we have yet to do, but will be upcoming in our future studies of this project. We're going to be doing a detailed traffic study of Old Town Mall, as well as the surrounding streets, to determine exactly how traffic flow is going to work and how it may impact some of the surrounding neighborhoods. As part of the future stages of this project, we will be looking at the utility work, doing some utility mapping and possibly utility upgrades. We will also be looking at stormwater management, grading, drainage, because flooding has become an issue over time with some of the neglect of Old Town Mall. We'll also be bringing this up to the city standards in terms of ADA compliance. That's the Americans with Disabilities Act. So that's going to make sure that the cross grading and the access are equitable. And then also we will be working with DOP and our partners in DHCD to do some of the permit filing and cleanup, the maintenance and management plans, as well as working through some of the ideas that we've received about public art, some signage, some wayfinding, things of that nature. So I'll close this out kind of with some different ways that you can share your feedback about this project. We have a survey on our Streets of Baltimore page. If you're not familiar with the Streets of Baltimore page, it's where Baltimore City Department of Transportation posts all of their ongoing projects and allows for feedback and a deeper dive into kind of the specifics. So that survey will remain open for some time. So if people leave this meeting, feel like they have something more that they want to say or share with us, the Streets of Baltimore page is a great place to do that. And then also I've listed, looks like we've listed the contact information for Mr. Leichman, who is the project manager of this, as well as Chiquetta Wallace, who is the community liaison. And there she is. She's waving. Okay. So thank you so much for your patience. Thanks for letting me kind of work through that. I'm going to leave this time now open for people who want to ask questions, who want to make clarification, or maybe who have concerns. I think we'll start with people in person, and then we'll go and do some of the virtual questions. And when you ask your question, I'm going to give you the mic so that everybody who is online can also hear your question. So I see we got one hand. And if you could just introduce yourself as well when you start talking.
Hi, my name is Jax, and I live on Sterling Street, which is right behind the mall, like Flatiron Alley. So my question is, in either design, have you considered what it looks like to control large crowds or population, right? In other words, do you anticipate that bikes could be a problem with regard to controlling crowds, or similar to what happens sometimes in Bell Point or Harbor East? Have you considered that in this designs?
Great question. And just to clarify, so when you're talking, am I out of range? Hello?
Then the mic's, she's the mic lady.
Green.
Testing. Uh-oh. There. Oh. Hello?
There you go.
You good?
No, light isn't blinking yet.
Tap again, because I heard. I'm hearing it too.
You're not of that.
Hello?
I think so.
Okay. So when you bring up those specific concerns, when you say bikes, I'm assuming do you mean dirt bikes or do you mean like bicycles?
Either,
Either.
because all of those would be allowed in these two concepts, right? And I've seen right across my, like, right by my house, where bikes will come by, and from a crime perspective, they will, use the bikes to, rob a person who is on another bike or walking by. I think about some of the things that are happening in other neighborhoods. And as we consider these great things, I just wonder what the calculus is in terms of crowd control.
Sure, that's a great question. Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll answer by saying that. So when we work on designs like this for public spaces, we use planning principles called and Miss Audette, if she's still here, she might know the better technical term for it, but it's crime prevention through environmental design. And the way that we do that is we try to create an environment. We know that people are generally safer when they are in larger crowds. We know that people are generally safer when there are very clear sight lines, not a lot of corners or dark places. We know that lighting is a really important part of public safety. And so we take all of those aspects of design very seriously when we're designing these sorts of things. What I'll say also for future kind of safety concerns is that we, DHCD, HABC, Baltimore City's Department of Transportation, we obviously work very closely with BCPD. And so these sorts of designs and standards are typically we're doing them with BCPD, or at least with them in mind, so that they can be as effective as we would like them to be in these spaces. But that's a really good question. I appreciate that. I'm not.
I know, it's not.
Is it kind of working? So I would just ask, when we're asking the question, try and speak
That
up.
better?
There we go, Chris.
Okay. Chris Broughton, Canton Community Association. One of my, a little bit of backstory, or if y'all aren't aware, this type of trend of building pedestrian malls was really popular in the like 70s and early 80s. A lot of cities did this. The unfortunate fact is most of them failed. There were a few that are still around and still really successful. And the common thread for the few that are still around is access to them is walkable. And that's the big problem that I see that hasn't changed since Old Town was originally developed as a pedestrian mall. Is it's surrounded on all sides by high-speed roads. So either you're going to drive here or you live very close nearby and it's going to service you, which is fantastic. But I think that when looking at this project, we need to consider how we're going to get people there outside of a car, especially when you consider half of Baltimoreans don't even own cars.
Good afternoon. The building is now closed. There should be no students in the building. The building is now closed. There should be no students in the building. If you are found in the building, that is considered trespassing. So please make your way to the nearest exit as quickly as possible. The building is now closed. Thank you.
None of you are students, are you? Okay, all right.
So it would be great to get MTA on board and improve the bus facilities, hell, even a bus rapid transit line on Fayette or something like that. Finish the bike lane on Central Avenue to connect up the Monument so that people on bikes can get there. Would be fantastic to see. And just overall traffic calm around the area, I think they really help long-term make this a success. So we're not back in the same place in 20 or 30 years. But just even if with the growth in this area, the commercial spaces are going to need people from outside the immediate walkable neighborhood to survive. So I think that should be a focus as well.
Thank you. Those are great points. I do want to point out that while they're not scoped as part of this project, Baltimore City DOT and DHCD are well aware of some of those concerns. And we do have other projects that are maybe a little more targeted towards that like walkability concern about this area. But it's a point well made, and we're absolutely we'll put that down, and maybe we can reach back out once we have a better understanding of how some of those projects are proceeding at pace. So I'm going to go over here and then I'll come back here. And if you could just introduce yourself.
My name is Diane. I actually grew up down Old Town Road, so I can give you a little history. They once had bus come through there. It would be great to have public transportation come through there. They basically remodeled that probably in the 70s, late 70s, early 70s. when they put the pavement and stopped the buses from coming through there. They also had an entertainment stage at one time. I didn't hear that part. My concern was, I think they need public transportation. It is walkable. It's been walkable for the East Baltimore area for many, many years. So that wouldn't be a problem. Also, I would like to know where are the boundaries? Is it from Orleans Street to Asper Street? Cross, I think that's Exeter Street, where the open lot at? And do you plan on putting a new fresh market there?
So that's a great question. And I see some of our partners in the back, but so the southern portion, past, Asquith is, privately, what's that?
What is Asquith?
Asquith?
Asquith. What is Asquith?
Is privately owned. And so we, BCDOT, as well as DHCD, are coordinating with the private owners and developers on the southern part of Old Town Mall, and they're going to be duplicating the kind of right-of-way work and improvements that we do on their side. And they also have their own development plan for the lot, and I believe some of these things. I can't speak with authority on exactly everything that they have planned for that area, but I do know that they are, it is under private ownership, and the last time I spoke with them, there were plans for specific redevelopment on those lots. So we'll make sure, John, that we take note of the public transit interest and the connectivity.
Well, there's 3 points that I want to make. There's 3 points that I want to make. Number one, what is the timetable of when this is going to happen? When are we talking about doing this? Number one. Number two is before you do it, you got to make sure all the buildings in the mall have the adequate utilities in order to develop if they haven't developed already. Because if you lay down the street and you make it all beautiful, and the guy wants to put apartments up on the 3rd floor, he needs sprinkler system. Well, what are we gonna do? Break up the ground to give him the adequate supply of water so that he can put sprinkler systems? So before you do anything, you gotta make sure that the utilities are available for redevelopment. I know personally, because even though the city says that they're responsible from the main to the meter, let me tell you something. I had to pay $10,000 per building to dig out the street and bring water to the meter, and then bring water from the meter to the building. Even though the city advertises that is the city's responsibility from the main to the meter. So, number one, the timetable. Number two, utilities. Number three, we need to have some sidewalk seating. So for an ice cream parlor, to put some stuff, you know, some chairs and tables, not much, but something. That would be nice. And the last is that a section of Old Town Mall does not have back doors, doesn't have a backside. It backs to another building. So that means that their deliveries have to be dropped right in front. If you don't have designated space for that, then, you know, if they get deliveries, where are they going to do it? From Orleans Street, they're going to come with a cart to roll up the materials? No. So you need to, I know inch for inch in Old Town Mall. I know every inch of Old Town Mall. So, here, you can have it. I'm allowing it.
There's also the one.
It's okay, I'm Greek, I'm allowed.
That's what's happening with the mic when you squeeze the
So you understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's it.
So I appreciate, do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, my name is Steve Zamora, and I've been working in Old Town Mall for the last 20 years.
So I want to make sure that I address all of those points. So the first one was the timetable. So where we're at currently in the process of this, or the project lifespan of this, this is deciding the concept. This portion is preceded by the engineering. So after this, after we've confirmed that this is what the community is interested in, we've accounted for some of these questions, we're going to go ahead and pass this along to an engineering firm. We'll work with them to create the drawings that need to take place before we can construct it. As of right now, I can't give you an expected construction date. What I can say is that we're working very closely with HABC and DHCD on this project, and that they're highly motivated to get this done as soon as possible. For the second question, I believe that was about utilities. Thank you. So we are working very closely with DPW on this project. As part of the construction phase of this project, it is right now, and forgive me, I do not work for DHCD, but I know enough to be dangerous. DHCD and DOT and DPW have been coordinating to renew the utilities in Old Town Mall. When we dig this up to rebuild it, DPW will, before we put it back, will be doing the majority of their utility work. And we're going to try and work that out so that we're not obviously building something beautiful and then destroying it and then filling it back with something that doesn't look as.
Electrical is another issue.
Absolutely. Was that correct?
Yeah, like, like for sidewalk, the kind of furniture for businesses that, they're fast food place or a restaurant or,
Yeah.
or ice cream parlor.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, they need to have something. That brings a lot of people into the area.
Absolutely.
If you have those amenities.
Yeah, so that was, that's certainly part of the project. It is every intention of ours as part of this to try and select what types of street furniture, like what does it look like? Do we want it to look modern? Do we want it to look traditional? And then we'll also be looking at where along the corridor are the best places for those to go. Obviously, we want to make sure that this has new trash cans, has benches, and then as kind of the second layer, when we start filling some of those storefronts and we start looking at what kinds of businesses are there, that's when we'll hand it over to the right-of-way division, who does the majority of like outdoor seating permitting and things of that nature, which will really try and bring this to life. The last comment was about loading. So one of the impetuses of this project was to try and create vehicular access through Old Town Mall in order to facilitate loading and unloading for those businesses that are capped in the back. And so both of these concepts call out those specific areas where those businesses do not have that rear loading access, so that they can, in the future, when this project is completed, they'll have that full ability to receive shipments from the front. Yes, sir. Ma'am.
Hi, I'm Angela Showell. I'm with Cover Me, See Me LLC. I've been in Old Town Mall in July. Hi, Dan, how you doing? I came in July. I see a lot of concerns. Probably press the button again. Something here. Top is up, the bottom.
Might be running out of battery. Oh, wait.
I really don't need this, but my concern is with the safety of Old Town Mall. We have a daycare center there. I don't know how long they'll be there, but we do have a daycare center there. Traffic, we have a lot of traffic, a lot of fast moving traffic. You have pedestrians that are walking back and forth. You have the merchants, all of the merchants with different people coming in and out. I'm very concerned about the safety. All of this is great, but safety comes first. You know, we have a lot that's going on in Old Town Mall. And I'm looking at your two concept, 1 and 2, where you are allowing parking, you have parking/loading. Here's one of my questions. Okay, me, as an owner there, I load and then I have to park. Do you have a designated parking space? How large is the parking space? Where the distance from the businesses to the parking spaces, some can't load from the back. And then after you load, where do you put your car? And so can you park out front all day long? You know, take up that time with parking and loading. So there's a lot that I'm concerned about when it comes down to the pedestrians, those that live there. We have a lot of seniors that comes through with walkers, with canes and all of that. I'm concerned about that. What are we laying down? Can they walk on it? Is it 501 compliance? I'm looking at all of that. And right now, it's terrible. It really is. We have potholes. I see babies with children with strollers and all of that. You know, it's really, really, really bad right now. And I don't like what I'm seeing because I'm there every day. And so I would love for friendly, the safety. Safety is foremost important to me. Safety, loading, unloading, and parking for the merchants. We have nowhere to park. I've been to court twice for a ticket, and I'm concerned about that because I cannot, if I load from the back, I have to walk to the end of the mall to come around to my business. That ought not to be. I'm a merchant. I have money. I have, you know, things that I'm walking with. And so that's a concern to me. If you're parking, once you're at your establishment, what happens next? Where do you park your car? When you leave at the end of the day and it's dark, how far do you have to go to get to your car? So those are my concerns. Right, lighting is, we talk about that.
Yes, ma'am. So lighting will be certainly addressed in the design. We're going to wildly improve the lighting. I want to make sure that we got all of those comments because one of the things that we have not addressed yet within this stage of the project is we know that there's going to be parking. We know that there's going to be vehicular access. We know that we're going to address a lot of some of the other things that you said. But some of the points you're making are great points. What does that parking look like and how does that work not only for people who are visiting Old Town Mall, but also for the merchants? I think what's typical in these types of corridors is that they try to create short-term parking, try to limit it to 15 or maybe even a maximum of 30 minutes. So that way the parking is really just for people who are going in and out or who need to get something into the car and then go away. I know that there is a large parking lot that is attached to this project, which is not part of the project. So for long-term vehicle storage, that parking lot will remain an option. But I hear you when you say, how do we manage when we have these businesses, the people who work there, the people who own these businesses, knowing that it's not always fun, especially in the current environment, to leave work at 7 or 8 and walk over to that parking lot. So I don't have an answer for you right now, but I want you to know that those are great questions. We're going to put them down and we're going to seriously look at those and consider those and try and see if we can create a good answer for you. Sir?
Hello, my name is Ray. I'm actually a firefighter over in Old Town Fire Station. I've been on the job for about 2 years now, so I've become pretty familiar with Old Town Mall. And I have some questions regarding sort of the private businesses doing construction as well. It's not a very wide corridor, especially with 10 feet of travel that you're proposing. I was just wondering when these buildings, eventually some of them will have to be demolished, and how will construction then take place with keeping the mall open for people to walk? Because I'm assuming that this project's going to be able to be completed before, the idea is to have this project completed before the private businesses redevelop and things change over there. But how is construction and further projects going to affect the mall being able to be open for walking? And then also parking lots. Can you speak again to the parking areas? Because I find that having to drive around this area a lot, I find that the parking lots generally disrupt the flow of traffic, but also just being able to access the area, especially if you're not going in on foot. So if you could just speak to the parking areas, and then as far as to speak to the man in the orange sweatshirt's comment about making this connected to other places, have you considered the connection to the farmer's market on Sundays? It is a little bit of ways off, but it's a straight shot down Hillen Street to the underpass. So I was just wondering if that's something in the future as well.
Thank you. So I want to clarify maybe the second question. The first question about construction. While we are highly motivated to get this project moving along a pace, construction will not take place for a little bit of time. I can't make a commitment to when it will happen, but we will continue to work with the property owners in the immediate area, continue to work with DHCD and HABC to make sure that as these businesses are being purchased or renovated, that we're coordinating with them. For the long-term vision, this type of commercial revitalization is always a challenge when you start to talk about, what kind of equipment they might need and then what kind of area that we're trying to cultivate. I don't have a perfect answer for you right now. I wish I did. I can tell you that we will certainly, just like BC DOT works and DHCD work together all the time on a lot of these efforts. We have very strict standards about when construction is happening and how much that can impact people's enjoyment of the public right-of-way. And so we'll continue to look at that and try and work with businesses, but also maintain that access as best as possible. For the connectivity piece, I'll just kind of reiterate what I said earlier, that there are some projects in this area. This is a known area of growth for the in terms of connectivity and things like that. And so I encourage you guys to connect, and I believe we did put some contact information, and maybe we can flick back to that. But I encourage you guys to reach out directly, and maybe we can give you some more information on what else is happening. And I do apologize. There was a third question in there.
It was about the parking lots. Who owns the parking lots, and what are the plans for making them green spaces or?
Sure. So you're talking about the off-site, that large parking lot off-site?
It's right off of Orleans and then the other one off Hilden.
So I believe that's under, and maybe you can help me out. That's under private ownership? Or a hotel, maybe, I think.
Basically, for the use of those buildings. Will those also be pedestrian? Will there be walkways or green space between those? Or is it going to be? Yes.
So understanding that there may be some more questions in person, I want to make sure that we get some of the questions off of our remote.
Okay, so we have 3 people who have raised their hands.
So let's first start with Chris. You raised your hand.
You can.
We have a Chris online. Okay. As a virtual attendee, I think it would be really helpful to also put your question in the chat.
I did. Chris, at least
Oh, absolutely. Good idea. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, I'm Chris Gwinnett. I'm a member of Baltimoreans for People-Oriented Places, or BaltPop, because that's a mouthful. And I really appreciate all the effort being put in to redesign it, to improve Old Town. I share a lot of concerns with a lot of folks here. For example, when they were when one of the first questions was asking about the surrounding roads, it was quite a tangle. Like just looking at it, there's a lot of green space and roads, green space divided by roads that don't really provide any additional access. So I was wondering if there's any consideration of maybe just kind of eliminating some of those unnecessary roads. And also, what do you think about, like, there's not a lot of housing around there because there's a literal sea of parking to the to the west around the prison and whatnot, and the high school football field to the north, and busy Orleans Street to the south. So yeah, my question is, how do you see stimulating growth and people visiting there? And secondly, I also want to say that I think it's a good idea to. Secondly, I want to say it's a good idea to promote loading access to Old Town Mall, but I don't see why that makes it necessary for anyone to be able to drive their personal car down Old Town Mall, especially when like overwhelming research shows that pedestrianized access is what is most economically successful. So I'm really hoping it can stay pedestrian, stay pedestrian, and just with the allowance of shipping vehicles and cargo vehicles.
The gist of the questions as I understand them, and I'll make another entreaty to the people online that if you have a question, it would be best for us if you would put it in the chat, because that way we can read it out and then answer it. So the gentleman online asked another similar question to those that have been brought up already about accessibility to the site. He also asked some questions about infill and residential development as they pertain to Old Town Mall. And then I think the final statement was more of a, if I remember correctly, concern over vehicular access and I guess a question about the necessity for vehicular access. So I'll start with the first part. We are aware that there is limited connectivity in this area. We are certainly, as an agency and as a city, trying to make efforts to address that. I encourage you to reach out to John, and we can find some more information on those projects. As for the residential portion, one of the exciting things about this Old Town Mall project is that it's being done in conjunction with what's frankly one of the country's largest public housing revitalization projects that's happened in the last 20 years. The PSO project, if you're not familiar with it, is a incredible piece of civic work that's been done both by HABC, the city, as well as private partners to rebuild the historic Perkins Somerset communities. And Old Town is part of this project, which is why this is so important to us. Not the only reason, but one of the reasons why it's so important to us. And the last part, talking about vehicular access, the reason why we're creating vehicular access where it has been deemed, it was removed at some point, as already stated by one of the attendees, is because the businesses there and the property owners have made the direct entreaty to the city, as well as some of the private developers, that they need this sort of access. The reason we've chosen this sort of Woonerf style is because I believe, and we believe, that it serves the best balance between a very friendly and inviting pedestrianized space while still maintaining the bare necessities of vehicular access and loading, which will best support the businesses while also trying to create a really nice environment to spend time in. So I know that we have another question over here, so I'm going to let this gentleman ask it, and then we'll get back to the online questions.
Okay, so how you doing? My name is Mark Jones. I own a Stagehand Hair Grooming Studios barbershop in the middle of the mall. I was wondering about internet. Like, I know that the internet is kind of choppy in the buildings, you know, for the customers or whatever. And is it some type of way we can increase the internet in the area or anything like that being done?
So that's a great point. That's obviously going to be wrapped up in the conversation. Most of our internet is sourced through conduit, which is like a city-owned pipe that contains a ton of different stuff in it. I do want to make sure that, John, we make a note of that so that we can also bring up not only the DPW issues, but possibly some of the Comcast issues. Yeah, I appreciate that insight.
That would help a lot.
John, you want to go ahead and maybe I'll read out another. So, and I apologize if I pronounce your name incorrectly, but Aisha Samani is asking, she's saying, I'm curious about access to the parking pads on Flatiron Alley. Residents of Sterling Street have parking pads behind their homes that are only accessible by Flatiron Alley. Is there a plan to make sure access is available to those parking pads? So currently, none of the designs, none of the construction impacts Flatiron, to my knowledge. The work being done or being designed right now is solely within the Old Town Mall right-of-way. So there should be no significant impacts to Flatiron Alley.
I have a third comment on Aisha's. It does impact it in that if there is no real plan for parking, then that's where they're gonna park, right? They're gonna park down the alley because we want to get to wherever it is that they want to go. So not including in a thoughtful and intentional way and thinking it all the way through is the same thing as saying, well, we're just gonna leave that problem for another day. And you can anticipate, but that's what's gonna happen.
Sure, and so, and maybe this is a question for my project manager or one of my consultants. Is there currently legal parking along Flatiron Alley?
There's a park there.
Okay.
My business is Flatiron's right there, that's where I park. But the problem with that is a lot of traffic coming that way now because businesses are open. And the only way you can get to the mall is to come through Flatiron. I'm getting a ton of calls from Google and all internet calling me because in order to get to the mall, they have to come through Flatiron. And it's sending a ton of traffic back there through Flatiron. And I park there, there's a daycare center that all of their traffic goes to Flatiron because all of the parents pick their kids up from the back. So Flatiron needs to be looked at really because there's a lot of traffic that you all are not aware of, that's coming through that area. Google are sending everybody to Flatiron. Flatiron, Madison, around to Ashford.
Yeah.
It's a whole lot.
Questions, part of there. So
Right.
I guess what I'm saying is it feels short-sighted to complete it in phases where you say, okay, this part is done, and then later we'll think about the parking. It feels like it should be kind of coupled with the design.
Sure. So I'm going to reiterate that just so everyone online can hear some of the commentary that's been made. So we've established that not only is there legal parking currently along Flatiron, but it's also the source of what seems like a surge in traffic. As some of the businesses come back along Old Town, people are using it a lot more heavily to access the rear side of some of these businesses to pick up and drop off. And from what I'm hearing from you, that the residents' direct concerns is not only that surge in traffic, but also that not all of that traffic is safe. Some of it may include some speeding and some of these other things, and then concerns about the growth of Old Town Mall and how that may further impact not only people who are using Flatiron Alley, but also the people who are living adjacent to it.
Use it and park there. I think you should think of it as a street
Yeah.
more than just an alley, right? Where parking occurs
That's good.
and through traffic occurs.
That's good.
I think it misses something to just talk about it in the way of an alley the way you typically would think about it.
Sure. No, I think those are really good points. I think from first blush, the kinds of things that would come to mind would be maybe having a conversation, ensuring that the parking is reserved for people in the neighborhood. We could look at some segments of that becoming RPP. We can obviously always look at elements of traffic calming as appropriate, but those are really good points, and I appreciate you making them. We're going to make some, what's that?
Like limited parking times and stuff like that, like meetings.
Right. So yeah, so there are some strategies that we have in terms of signage and how parking is legalized, where we can make sure that it's always available for the people who live there, the community. But you know, we also want to make sure that we're addressing some of these other concerns. People are using it as a pass-through, and they're driving erratically or sometimes dangerously or irresponsibly. We want to make sure that we're calling out the specific kinds of interactions or interventions that we can do.
Right now, we can use that to what? Excuse me.
Understood.
Mr. lives on Fairway Street.
Yes, ma'am.
Have you been in around there since they go, or since you, when it first?
Beginning?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I would believe that when they plan on, they used to have a closed zone. You only can go down there and park and come back out. It wasn't a throughway. So I think that's something to look.
Certainly.
They used to have it blocked off.
So I'll just repeat this for our online audience. One of the attendees is making the point that in the past, that may have been dead-ended.
Yes.
Which would have maybe headed off some of these issues, but may have created others. So we certainly want to analyze this as part of the larger project. And I think that those are really, really important points. I'm going to go back to online and see if we have a couple of more questions.
I'll send a couple like comments.
Okay. I think the comments, for the most part, we can register them, and we will reflect them in our notes. Is this project aiming to be completed before the new hotel and business area scheduled for the end of the mall? That is a great question. I don't know the answer to that yet. Private partners of the city are engaging in the majority of that development. They don't return my calls anymore. Sorry, that's a joke. I don't believe that time schedule has been established yet. Similar to this project, I believe everybody is moving forward as quickly as possible. But there are complications. Some of those complications involve funding. And so today, standing in front of you, I can't give you a 100% answer. But what I can say is that we are coordinating very closely with those partners.
Next one here, which is about concept 1 and 2.
2 points. If concept 1 has twice as many disadvantages as concept 2, why are we still considering option 1? Great question. So one of the great parts about vetting these concepts is that we then get to show the community kind of our homework, right? We have looked at both of these concepts. These concepts were developed in the early stages of this project, and we took them through the ringer. Right now, I can say, me, myself, I'm leaning towards the concept that has more advantages than disadvantages. But certainly some of those things can change as we talk to members of the community and people inform us about the current conditions and what they'd like to see. There's a world where concept 1 still has value or has aspects of it that we can take and adapt to the concept 2. Shaquetta? Great idea. Okay, so I've changed them. Now we can kind of see where it is.
The point 2.
Oh, point 2. If, as you mentioned, people feel safe and well-lit areas and you're going to flood it with light, won't that then make the adjacent Sterling Street the darker, please go fix my computer. Won't that then make adjacent Sterling Street the darker, more unsafe area now? Question. I don't think in the current proposal or idea, the objective is to flood Old Town Mall with light. I can say from experience, flooding areas with light don't make them nice places to go and spend money and have a drink and eat some food and linger. So I won't say that our objective is to flood it. So light pollution, probably not as big of an issue. However, as part of this project in the implementation stage, and then also looking after the implementation, we will certainly be looking at things like if Old Town Mall receives a lot more traffic, a lot more people, if there are businesses that are opening and staying open later, we'll want to make sure that those impacts from that development aren't wholly blunted by one community. All of the negative things and they get none of the positive things. So while that's not specifically in the scope of this project, it's certainly part of, kind of the long-term analysis of the success of this project is whether not only have we created an area and a space where people want to be, but also is that space then held in high regard by people who live nearby.
We did have one question come in.
Did we really? What about noise? This is a very quiet neighborhood. How do you think this will affect noise in the area? I don't know yet. We'll have to see what types of businesses we get. Currently, the scope of this project remains, again, just the recreation of the streetscape. I think that that's a great question and certainly an area of concern if you're a resident, kind of going back to my last point. We want to make sure that this is an asset to the community and not an eyesore or maybe another problem. I also, I saw him sneak in, but I wanted to make sure that I give an opportunity for the councilman to weigh in here if you would like to. But one of the best ways to ensure that as these sorts of new areas get developed and we get lots of new businesses and exciting new opportunities, that some of the negative externalities, that's like a word for like the bad things that can come with good things, are adequately addressed. We want to make sure that DHCD and their code enforcement is coming out and making sure people aren't dumping stuff out of the back of their businesses, or that we're not seeing high excessive speeding in the residential areas. All of those things will be continued to be analyzed as kind of the follow-up to this project. Ma'am?
I have two questions. Do Old Town have an association? It wouldn't be a community, it would be more like a version association. That's one way to help keep safety and all that exit stuff down and making sure everybody's doing what they need to do. And this one gentleman mentioned doing the work, but you had buildings that may need some construction. So my concern, and I couldn't really understand what you're saying. So is the construction gonna come first, and what type of businesses they plan on bringing back?
Those are two great questions. I'll reiterate them for our online audience. So the first question was a good opportunity to try and continue to engage with this area as well as the community would be whether or not they have a merchants association. I believe there is a merchants association that is present in this area, and we do coordinate with them. DHCD has a very close relationship with them, and they talk to them a lot. For the second point, which was construction, a lot of the businesses or buildings, frankly, along Old Town are not in great condition. Some of them need rehabilitation. And what does that look like? What kind of businesses do I think are coming? I don't have all those answers. What I do know is that DHCD, HABC, and the Merchants Association that represents this area are highly motivated to take some of these properties, which I believe some are still under city ownership. And Ms. Audette, maybe you know the answer to this better than I do. But does the city own some of the buildings adjacent to Old Town?
Yes, there are a few properties that are city-owned. I will say several also are owned by HABC, which is the Housing Authority of Baltimore City. I think everyone, city involved, is hoping to put those out for receivership, to sell them to developers who will fix them up and make them useful again.
My problem, all developers want to do is build apartments, no merchants.
That's a great question.
You may build 2 apartment buildings downtown.
Right. I think,
Right, buy some more and build some more apartments.
right. I think some of that question, some of that is a question for zoning, which by all means, everyone, go talk to Ms. Audette after this meeting.
Just really quickly, I just want to thank everyone for coming out. Your input is really important as this process moves forward. Also want to thank DOT for coming out today and putting on this, listening session. But just want to say there's a lot of great things that are going to happen down at Old Town Mall. Even just growing up in East Baltimore, though we see forgotten about, and you just over the years watch it dilapidate. But it's great to see. There's going to be a lot of private investment going into Old Town, but today is more about, while private investment is going to happen, private development is going to happen, there is still a section that's owned by the city in this part. And the cool part of the city is looking to say, wow, this great stuff may be happening on one section of Old Town. What can we do to that northern eastern section that the city still owns? That's going to interact and impact the community. And this is your opportunity to make sure your voice is heard in that process. Because a lot of it is going to be privately owned and we may not have much of a say what happens there. But with the public owned part, this is the portion in which, kind of they're asking about, I'm going to get your input about. And just want to say we've been listening as well, taking notes on what your concerns are and making sure as this public portion of it is developed, to make sure Old Town is as beautiful as it once was, that input is also what you should, it's also considered. But yes, you had a question.
So will it be RFPs that will come out for those, city-owned?
That part is already been done years ago, I think.
Those will not.
What the question was whether or not there was RFPs for that other part that's not by the city. There was already an RFP. I think it's still by Beatty Group or someone. Okay, that's what it is, yeah. So, yep, that's where they're gonna, I guess, build that section off, but it's still the section that the city owns and everything else, so. And as far as some of the buildings that the city still own there, there'll be a process in which they look for private developers to, take ownership and do something with those.
I have a question for, I don't know, Caitlin, do you have any news about the grocery store?
The grocery store last time I heard is still on track. There's still conversations about it being developed. That's still planned on, it's coming. Yep, yeah.
It is happening, construction should happen very, so I would expect groundbreaking for the next, for the handful of months.
And are they gonna have a partnership?
Yes.
So that goes with this. I mean, I know that they're separate projects, but I'm just wondering if that.
Yeah, so for the Somerset projects, each of those has, each of the required parking. For the grocery store, they will have a surface parking lot adjacent along Orleans, adjacent to the church.
Okay.
And then there will be parking within the building itself that will, serve both the grocery store as well as the units above it, because it'll be an 8-story building.
Okay.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Councilman. So I think we're at time for the evening. So I want to thank everyone again for coming out, everyone online for tuning in. Feel free to follow up with us, either the contact information that was on the presentation or visiting the Streets of Baltimore page for Old Town Mall. We are also encouraging everybody as they leave to fill out the sheets that were handed out, the comment cards. If you have another concern or question or thought, I encourage you to fill those out and leave them with our community engagement liaison, Shaquetta. Again, thank you so much. Everyone have a great night. Yeah.